Monday Night Raw starts off with Rhea Ripley. She ends up cutting a promo. She ends up mentioning the attack last week with Asuka and Kairi attacking her and Io. And she ends up basically saying that she wants a match against Io and Kairi saying, no, not against Io and Kairi saying, against the Kabuki Warriors, Asuka and Kairi saying. Io Sky then comes out. She ends up admitting that Rhea Ripley was right, but that is still her family and that she still wants to be with them. She was about to leave the ring, but then you end up getting Asuka and Kairi on the Titantron. And Asuka basically ended up saying that she trained Io, she was a mentor towards Io, and that she taught Io everything she knows, and that she paved the way for her, and that then she started to pretend like they weren't her family anymore, and that she pretended that Rhea was her family, and that she is willing to forgive her if she is willing to apologize. Then you end up getting Io Sky. She ends up leaving the ring. She leaves the ring, then the Kabuki Warriors end up attacking Rhea Ripley. Io comes back, tries to make peace of the situation, but then Asuka ends up hitting her with the mist, and then they end up, the heels stand tall in the situation. Then later in the show, we end up getting it confirmed that it will be a match at Crown Jewel between the Kabuki Warriors and Io Sky and Rhea Ripley. And then it was a later segment where Kairi Sane was trying to, make peace and tell Io to just apologize to Asuka, but Io ends up refusing to apologize, and then Kairi ends up walking off all sad with a picture, ends up giving the picture to Io, which is a picture of all three of them. I like the story. This is very interesting. I like the story they've been doing. It's unfortunate we couldn't get this level of storytelling with Io as champion. I don't understand what was Triple H's problem with that. I don't understand why all of a sudden now he's able to give Io Sky a story. But this is very interesting. I love the story of Asuka being the jealous friend, Kairi being the person that's constantly being abused and manipulated through the situation. I like what they're doing here. This is very interesting. Very interesting to see what happens after Crown Jewel, because I could see either situation working, because I could kind of see the heels winning in that situation. Because if you want the story to continue, I would probably have the Kabuki Warriors win. But when you have Io Sky and Rhea Ripley on the same team, it's very hard to imagine them losing. So it's gonna be a very tricky situation here, and I'm assuming that this eventually has to lead into an eventual one-on-one match between Io Sky and Asuka. So I'm like, how do we eventually get to that point if Rhea Ripley and Io are just gonna beat them at Crown Jewel? Don't know, but I do like the story. I love the story. I like the friendship between Rhea Ripley and Io Sky. Um, this is very interesting. I just hope that this leads into a bigger picture when it comes to Asuka here, and this is not one of those stories where we just have a heel turn for the sake of a heel turn, and then you do nothing with that heel. That's why I'm hoping. That was one of my biggest fears with Naomi, where when they just turned her heel and then they just do nothing with her. But they end up actually delivering on that. I hope they do something similar with Asuka. That doesn't necessarily mean win a title, but I hope that at least builds some credibility in the main event scene, that can have some credibility for future feuds for the world title or for the IC title in the future. So I hope this heel turn actually goes somewhere. But a very interesting story. It's one of the more interesting things on Raw. Now we end up getting a Intercontinental Championship match between Rusev and Dominic Mysterio. This was a fine match. Dominic retains as I expected. He ended up using some cheating shenanigans. He tries to pull an Eddie Guerrero where he tries to pretend he got hit with a steel chair, but the referee ends up seeing him. Then we end up getting a moment where Dominic grabs the ref while he was in the corner, and then he ends up hitting a low blow on Rusev and rolls him up. I mean, it's whatever. It's fine. I really just don't see the point of having Dominic be champion, especially because it just feels like anything Judgment Day related. I like the Judgment Day. It just feels like everything they do is just a filler arc, because it's very, because people want to talk about SmackDown waiting on Bianca. It is so obvious that Judgment Day are waiting on Liv Morgan. Like, they have been doing the teases and teases for months, bro. It is ridiculous. At this point, I don't even know if they're even going to pull the trick on, because for the longest time, we all thought that it was going to be Finn Balor costing him the IC Championship. At this point, just strap that storyline. Just have Dom lose clean, because at this point, no one cares, bro. It just is what it is. It's very obvious they're waiting on Liv Morgan, and I love the Judgment Day. I do, but it's getting to that point where I'm going to have to stop reviewing them. I'm going to have to stop talking about them on the channel, because I just do not care. And I should care about this faction. They have Roxanne Perez, one of my favorites, and they have Raquel, who is improving every single week, and I love Dom, but it's like, bro, it's getting to a point where it just feels like filler. Everything they do feels like a filler arc and nothing matters because it's like we're all just waiting for Liv Morgan to return and we don't know when that's going to happen. She could return by Royal Rumble season at that. So it's like we don't know when she's going to return. We'll see how this plays out. Afterwards, we end up getting a match between Bayley and Raquel. Before the match started, we ended up getting a segment between Bayley and Lyra. Bayley ended up, acting all happy. She's in a positive mood, but then she was trying to ask Lyra to be by her side again, but Lyra ends up refusing this time due to what happened last week, and that she wants to keep her distance because she can't take the constant mood swings of Bayley. So Raquel wins due to the interferences of Roxanne Perez. They attack her. Then you get Lyra comes for the save, but she ends up failing. But she was getting attacked, and then Bayley ends up having, a mental breakdown, and she ends up reverting back to her heel wail again to save Lyra. And then it was a moment where it looks like she was about to get the same thing that happened last week with Bayley attacking her because she turned around and she had a very mean look on her face. But then she ends up all of a sudden changing her facial expression, ends up going back to being happy. And then she's all excited and happy and very, very eager all of a sudden. And then Lyra's just confused by this, but she ends up accepting it. They end up, having a little handshake, and that was it. I like the story they're doing her of her having these multiple personalities, the split personalities. One moment she goes from this psycho crazy chick, and then the next moment she goes from this lovable happy person. So I like the story they're going here. Hopefully it leads to something more. I'm assuming this is probably going to lead into a feud with her and Lyra. That's the only thing that makes sense right now. So very interested to see how this plays out. I'm loving what they're doing right here. We do end up getting a quick Becky Lynch segment with her and Maxine Dupree. She basically confronts Maxine, basically calls her a loser, calls her pathetic, and then in the middle of it, she ends up punching Tozawa. And Maxine, of course, gets offended by it, and then Becky Lynch ends up walking away, comes back, attacks Maxine while she was assisting Tozawa, and then that's really it. But there's going to be a match next week. I don't know if it's for the Women's IC Championship. I just know they have a match. So we're going back to Maxine Dupree for whatever reason. I like Maxine Dupree. I do. I just don't understand why we're going back to this feud. I just don't understand it. I don't mind it if you actually build on this feud, but my issue is this is just going to feel like a filler arc, in my opinion. But if they actually build upon this feud and add Natalya to it, I don't mind it, to be fair, to be honest. So we'll see how this plays out. But I just don't know why we're going back to this feud after I feel like we already complete this, but we'll see how this plays out. And we end up getting a Seth Rollins promo. Starts off with him. He ends up mentioning the 3 losses that he got to Cody. And he says he doesn't care about those 3 losses because those are the past. Those L's does not matter, but this match at Crown Jewel matters because those matches before were just both of them trying to get to the top. Now they're both at the top, and now this is the match to prove who is going to be the guy that's going to lead the future of the WWE for the next 10 to 15 years. Then Cody Rhodes comes out. He basically ends up mentioning the past, ends up mentioning their history, mentions WrestleMania 40, and mentioned how Seth Rollins was his shield. Then Seth Rollins ends up stopping him. Before that, Cody ends up mentioning how he thought they was friends. Seth ends up stopping him, ends up saying that they was never friends, that the only reason why he helped them was because he was the lesser of 2 evils, and that at Crown Jewel, he's going to make a new legacy and a new vision that's going to be led by him because he is the guy that should be running the company, not him. This was a great segment. I love this. The back and forth are great. This is what we need more of. Hopefully we get this next week as well. And to be honest, you don't even need another promo segment between these two next week, to be honest. You could just have a little vignette package, or if you're not going to have a vignette package, you could have a sit-down interview. I would prefer that, actually, a sit-down interview or a quick little backstage segment. But long as it ain't the bronze being inserted into this feud, I'm good. But I like what they're doing here. This Cody Rhodes and Seth Rollins feud has been really good. It's been good for the past few years, to be honest with you, and I like what they're doing this stuff. I like what they're doing to build towards Crown Jewel. It's one of the better, build up towards Crown Jewels in general. Because typically Crown Jewel is more of a filler arc to a degree, so it's very hard to really get invested. But this is one of the rare moments where you can actually get invested into it due to the history that they have. So I like this. This was a great segment. Interested to see how this plays out. Now we get the main event. Usos versus Division in a tornado tag match. It was a good match. It was a fun match. You get Roman Reigns. He comes out, makes his appearance, attacks the Bronze, help the Usos win. Then after the match, you end up getting Roman and Jay. they're basically talking to each other, and then you get Roman giving him that same advice that he's been giving Dre: smash them all, no one else matters, just do whatever it takes type mentality. And you get Jimmy Uso, he's just standing there like just disappointed, like just upset that he's seeing this in his eyes. I was laughing throughout the entire segment because Jimmy's facial expression is just hilarious throughout this entire segment. Him just being like very like disappointed and just upset at like just seeing them two just get along so perfectly. But this was overall a good show. I enjoyed the show overall. I like what they did towards the end, still teasing, Jey Uso going down that darker path. Will he go down that hill path? We don't know. But I like this overall of Monday Night Raw. You guys let me know your overall thoughts and opinions down below. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. But yeah, that's it.